More video games! Yeah, 2 cartridges! Yeah!
So here we are, Christmas 2013, which marks the 25th anniversary of when I got my Nintendo. It's most common nowadays for this video game system to be referred to by the abbreviation of its full name, NES for Nintendo Entertainment System. But back when it was new, most people just called it the Nintendo, because there weren't yet any other Nintendos. This is the story of how this system slowly entered my consciousness during the mid to late 1980s, culminating with my receiving one for Christmas in 1988. This is the story of my Nintendo Christmas. Once upon a time, my dad brought home an Atari 400 computer. I was 4 years old. It's largely a story for another time, but it's important here because this picture of me from that day, playing a Humpty Dumpty puzzle game, is a picture of my introduction to video games. This computer served as my first video game system, along with the 1200 XL and 800 XL, also from Atari's line of 8-bit computers. One of my favorite games we had for these computers was an excellent home version of Donkey Kong. I can still remember my excitement upon completing the first stage for the first time. Donkey Kong and its characters became a big deal to me as a kid. When I turned 5, I had a Donkey Kong birthday cake, complete with root beer barrel candies. I soon learned that the game had a sequel, Donkey Kong Jr. My brother Clint got that game as a gift that Christmas. Another game I enjoyed was Mario Brothers. Here I saw Mario, the hero of Donkey Kong and villain of Donkey Kong Jr., as the titular character, and I was introduced to his brother Luigi. I saw a lot of arcade games as a kid, and played some of them. My main exposure to them was on my annual birthday trip to Showbiz Pizza Place. I played the Donkey Kong arcade game there for the first time, after having played the home version. Here I am on my 6th birthday playing the Star Wars arcade game. I got to go there a second time that year, when my grandma took me late that summer. It was then that I saw Super Mario Brothers, which would have been the Versus arcade version. I'm not sure if I actually played the game then. I may have been out of tokens or something, but what I remember is being amazed with how good the game looked. My eyes were especially drawn to the flickering question mark blocks. I also played a funny game there where you actually held a gun and shot at ducks, and when you missed them, a dog came out and laughed at you. A couple weeks or so later at a family get-together, while playing in the yard with my cousin Jimmy, he yelled out, "Let's play Duck Hunt!" I asked what that was, and someone said, "Duck Hunt, do you have Nintendo?" I said yes. After all, I remembered seeing that name on the Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. cartridges for my Atari. I understood that that was the company that made those games. So yes, I had Nintendo. Jimmy then said, "Let's play Mario Brothers." "No, let's play Super Mario Brothers." It was this day that, without realizing it yet, I first learned of this video game system called the Nintendo. I would later put it together that Duck Hunt was the game with the laughing dog I had played at Showbiz. Not long afterwards, the system's existence started becoming more clear to me. I don't really remember seeing many commercials on TV or store displays. I know they existed, and maybe they played a factor, but the biggest thing for me was hearing about it via word of mouth. For Christmas of that year, my brother's friend Nathan got a Nintendo. After my brother went over there and played it one day, I asked him what it was like. He seemed not too impressed, though. "You don't even use a joystick," he said. "You use A and B buttons." Okay, that made some sense, so you had 2 fire buttons. "But how do you move your guy around?" I asked him. He told me there was this flat thing with 4 arrows that you used. My interest in the Nintendo grew more, but it was still sort of this mysterious new thing I was just learning about. I still had my Atari computer with some great games that I played often, and I played some more arcade games when I had the opportunity. The next spring I went back to Showbiz for my birthday. I discovered one of the Punch-Out arcade games that time. It was a boxing game with great graphics and fun characters. That same spring, I made a new friend across the street named David. One day that summer, he was over at our house doing a rap about something called The Legend of Zelda. That August, my family went to my mom's cousin's place for a get-together. They always seemed to have cool stuff at that house, and this time, they had a Nintendo, which I got to play for the first time. And I was completely obsessed with it. I played Solomon's Key, they had Gauntlet for it, I played Duck Hunt. The Zapper was really cool. At one point I stood up in a cool action pose with it while I played. And then there was Super Mario Bros. It's hard to explain what it was like to play this game for the first time, but it was just so much more advanced than anything I'd ever played before. Later that evening, my mom's cousin walked into the room and asked, "Dan, aren't you a little Nintendo'd out by now?" When we left to drive home the next day, someone commented, "He wanted to take that Nintendo home with him." And my mom replied, "Yeah, but we already have the Atari and all the games." David across the street soon got a Nintendo as well. Before I had a chance to play it at his house, we would talk about it a lot. He referred to the games as Nintendo tapes. He told me about this boxing game called Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, which sounded like the arcade game I played at Showbiz. He also had the first issue of this new magazine called Nintendo Power. I looked through the magazine and saw images of a lot of cool games, and I was drawn to the back cover, which showed several rows of game box art. There was one on there called Metroid, but the box art didn't really interest me. We usually hung out in David's backyard, but one day we were inside, and I got to play the Nintendo again. I played Super Mario Bros. Some more, as well as pro wrestling. But then he broke out Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Now that was an awesome game. I loved the gameplay and the array of colorful characters, especially King Hippo and how he was so fat he couldn't get up. When I started second grade that fall, I learned that some kids in my class either owned or had also played the Nintendo. The kids at school also called the games Nintendo tapes. That seemed to be the common slang term, so I started calling them that too, and each time I said it around my dad, he would correct me and tell me they were cartridges. One day when we went to rent a movie at our local video store, Star Video, I saw that you could rent Nintendo tapes there. One of the games they had was The Legend of Zelda. "Hey look, Clint," I said, "The Legend of Zelda, it's a game." Years later, I learned that the rap David had taught us was from a commercial for that game. You remember my cousin Jimmy, right? He had talked about Duck Hunt and Super Mario Bros. The year before. He had a new baby brother named Joey, and that November, there was a party at their house for Joey's christening, and I got to play Nintendo again. Of course, I played Super Mario Bros. Some more, but this time I finally got to see what this Legend of Zelda was all about, and it was pretty awesome. Then Jimmy popped in Metroid. Boy, was I wrong about that game. Playing as this character in a cool spacesuit, running through passageways in these different environments with crazy enemies. Wow. It was a bit of a ride home from my aunt and uncle's house that evening. When you're 7, you start counting down the days until Christmas in September. Well, here it was early November. Christmas wasn't too far away. In the car, I raised the subject with my parents about asking for a Nintendo for Christmas. I really wanted one. Yeah, we had the Atari computer and all the games, but the games for the Nintendo were just on another level, and I wanted my own system to experience whenever I wanted. When I put together my Christmas list, it had 3 items: the Nintendo Action Set with that Super Mario Bros. And Duck Hunt cartridge, 2 controllers, and the Zapper. And I also asked for Mike Tyson's Punch-Out and Metroid. That Christmas morning, they were under the tree. I opened them and played them until we went to my grandma's house that evening. There was a card that came in the box for the system that we took with us, so I could fill it out and we could mail it in the next day. It was an application for a membership in the Nintendo Fun Club, complete with a free issue of Nintendo Power. And so it all began. Next to me in the blackness lay my 8-bit gray plastic beauty. The greatest Christmas gift I had ever received or would ever receive. Gradually I drifted off to sleep, pranging ducks on the wing and getting off spectacular hip shots.